It's now been 5 years since Shanghai set up China's first pilot free trade zone. Now, when the zone was launched, it streamlined procedures for business registration, bringing down the time it takes for companies to obtain a license from 40 days to 3 working days. Now, Shanghai has been in the forefront of the nation's opening up efforts, especially in the financial sector. It's also the first city that's adopted the negative list approach, and that dictates which sectors are open to foreign investors. The Shanghai model has been replicated in other parts of the country. In 2014, China set up 3 other free trade zones and 7 more in 2016, bringing China's total number of free trade zones to 11. Well, for more on China's free trade zones, I'm joined by Dan McClory, live from California. He's Managing Director and Head of China for Boustead Securities. Hi, Dan.
Hello, Rochelle.
So how much progress has been made in China's free trade zones since they were launched?
I think a tremendous amount. Just the statistics you talked about, which is the expansion from 1 to 11. So that says something about the concept. I mean, I think the concept has become a reality. If you look at numbers, foreign direct investment in China through the 7 months of July this year was about $500 billion yuan, about 75 billion US dollars. Guess what? About $10 billion of that went directly into these free trade zones. So I think they've proven the model, the Shanghai model. As you say, it's diversified away from just financial services, and we've seen many successful examples throughout China.
So now that they have this experience under their belts in terms of what works and what doesn't in these free trade zones, how do you think this could successfully be replicated across China?
Well, again, we're seeing it with the additional zones that have been added. I'll give you an example. I think geographic as well as industry specialization really works well. If you look at Shaanxi, they have an agricultural free trade zone, and a company right here in Southern California, Kiwa Biotech, is actually exporting their organic fertilizers through that particular free trade zone. It's a company we spent a fair amount of time with. So specializing in areas that have certain industry expertise or cluster will do more, and it will just attract foreign companies to want to be involved. But also, smart Chinese companies are aligning themselves with these foreign trade zones as well.
Now, let's also talk about the revisions made with the new negative list, which opens up even more sectors to foreign investment. What are the real standouts there for you?
Well, first of all, I don't like the idea of calling something a negative list. I mean, I know that's taken for granted in the industry, but let's talk about how that list has gone from 180 companies, sectors down to just 60. I mean, 2/3 have been loped off. I can think of 3 major examples. One is aircraft manufacturing. For years, that was a topic of large discussions. Of course, energy, with the opening up of oil and gas now to foreign firms. And I think the third one is education. So educational institutions and all the products that they traffic in being able to come through these free trade zones being taken off of this negative list. I think those are tremendous sectors that are going to see a lot of input of products and services.
Now, given the significance of China's huge economy, obviously more foreign investors would like to get a bigger piece of that pie. So what else are foreign investors hoping for with these free trade zones?
Well, first of all, it's efficiency. Cutting down on the red tape, having goods flow through on an easier, more friction-free manner. And, I have to talk about one of our clients, which is Yamato. They're the leader in cross-border e-commerce in China. But they've actually set up adjacent to a free trade zone, the one in Shanghai, where they're bringing goods into China from all around the world. They have a logistics subsidiary called Ex-Lobo, which has set up centers in major cities throughout the world. And they have seen fit to use this leverage, as they refer to it. I was talking to Bibo Zhang, who is their CEO, just a few minutes ago. And the leverage, which allows them to be much more efficient, pass those cost savings down to their customers, is tremendous. And I think that's what it's about for foreign investors into China, for Chinese companies that want to utilize these free trade zones and align themselves with incoming foreign products. I think China's done a really good job launching these areas.
And as you mentioned, according to China's Ministry of Commerce, more than 35,000 new foreign invested companies were established in China just in the first 7 months of 2018. And that's a year-on-year increase of 99.1%. But then you also have a lot of this protectionist sentiment popping up in parts of the world. What sort of a challenge could that pose to the trend?
Well, on the one hand, I think it's almost ironic that despite all the shrapnel flying around about the trade wars, that China has been able to attract that number of companies, I mean, I think that really says something about the long-term view that foreign companies have to China. And despite some spats and back and forth, they're committed to the market. So on the one hand, I think that's a very commendable performance. On the other hand, I believe that ultimately all of this trade war banter is going to get worked out, and companies and countries will come together. They'll find common ground. Certainly, countries outside of China are seeing this opening up, like we talked about the negative list being cut by 2/3. They're seeing the results of this foreign direct investment. So I think we shouldn't be distracted by kind of the grease fires that are going around amongst us and around us, even though they're really important every day.
Right.
And we need to look at this kind of progress, this incremental progress that's taking place undisputedly.
All right. Thank you so much. Dan McClory there of
You're
Boustead
welcome.
Securities.